Nature is harsh, and the animal kingdom is full of deadly creatures that could end a human life in an instant. Crocodiles, elephants, bears. Wait, is that a poodle? Some people bring it on themselves, while others just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Either way, when your number's up, it's up, and they all have one thing in common. They're getting their moment of fame in today's episode of the Infographics Show. Embarrassingly Stupid Ways People Died, Part 4. Number 26. Lester C. Harvey was a man's man, an avid outdoorsman from Virginia who lived for the hunt. But in 2024, that passion would be the death of him. Out on a hunt with his friends, they spotted a bear and gave chase. It was bear season and they were ready for their prize, but this bear was smarter than your average, well, you know what we mean. Instead of running blindly, it outsmarted them, clambering up a nearby tree, safely out of range. So naturally, they chalked it up to a loss and they went about their day. Or they would have if they weren't from Virginia. The men tried to prod the bear out of the tree, but they failed. And as they retreated, one of the men aimed his gun and proceeded to shoot the bear right out of the tree. His bullet hit the target, and the bear tumbled down onto the ground right on top of the unfortunate Lester. Bears are pretty big animals, so this was a critical blow. And despite frantic first aid attempts, Lester died of his injuries at a nearby hospital. Of course, he wasn't the only death related to this incident. That bear is no doubt still being toasted at the local honeypots. And not even prominent citizens are safe from embarrassing ends. Number 25. Johnny Turner was an American attorney who assembled quite the career over his almost 77 years of life, serving as an Army medic and operating a successful private practice. He even tried to kickstart a political career, serving in the Kentucky House of Representatives in the late 90s. Everyone likes a comeback story, and Turner was re-elected to the Kentucky Senate in November 2021. It was a big victory for him, but the Kentucky power broker wouldn't even see the end of his first term in office. And it wouldn't be the voters that did him in either. Turner was riding a lawnmower at his home in Harlan when he took a wrong turn and proceeded to drive it directly into the swimming pool. This would have been an embarrassing incident, except that the pool was empty at the time, so instead of a wet pair of clothes and a ruined mower, Turner suffered fatal injuries. He was eulogized by local politicians, including national figures like Senator Mitch McConnell, as a dedicated public servant. However, no one had anything to say about his driving skills. And for these Indian tech powerhouses, they flew a little too close to the sun. Number 24. Sanjay Shaw had made it big. His tech company Vistex was based in Illinois and was gaining popularity across the ocean. Now he and his company president Raju Datla were in Hyderabad to celebrate their company's success in front of hundreds of guests and employees. And they wanted to make an entrance in a big way. Shaw and Datla were set to make a dramatic entrance, being lowered onto the main stage in an iron cage descending from a specially built wooden platform. It was going to be spectacular. They would appear as if sent from the heavens, ready to dazzle the crowd. And then things went horribly wrong. As the gentle descent began, a chain broke. The metal cage fell 15 feet to the stage below in front of horrified onlookers. Shaw died at the hospital from injuries to his leg and hand, while Dadla suffered a critical head injury that left him in a coma. He died several months later. Both men were eulogized as pillars of the Indian tech scene and praised as good bosses, but it was no doubt a warning to future tech executives to keep a hands-on approach, but maybe don't do your own stunts. This next victim is the definition of too much of a good thing. Number 23. The small town of Romano di Lombardia was known for its beautiful landscapes and its bountiful cheeses. Like its namesake, it did a brisk business in selling massive wheels of Grana Padano cheese, a Parmesan-style cheese known for its hard rind. These cheeses need to ripen in storage for a long time, and someone has to check on them. And one day in 2023, that job fell to Giacomo Ciapparini, a 74-year-old cheese expert who was responsible for inspecting the cheese. Lots and lots of cheese. And those cheeses weighed a lot. He worked in a warehouse that stored upwards of 15,000 wheels of cheese on an intricate collection of metal shelves that stood up to 32 feet high. As he was inspecting the shelves, one of them collapsed, creating a domino effect that sent hundreds of wheels tumbling down on the old man. When the authorities arrived, they had to bring in extra help just to move all the cheeses and shelves before finally discovering the unfortunate Mr. Ciapparini. The cheese inspector made a fate rarer than a perfectly aged Parmesan: death by Formaggio. Nature is brutal, and sometimes it's petty. Number 22. Let's head back to India, where elephants are a part of everyday life. The massive beasts are usually peaceful, but they can be startled, and when they are, they can cause a lot of damage. That's what happened to Maya Mermu, who was collecting water in a rural area of India. She had the misfortune of encountering a herd of elephants and attempted to flee, but one of the elephants ran toward her and trampled her. She was killed instantly, and her family transported her body back to home for burial. And that is where things get weird, because an elephant never forgets. As the funeral proceedings went on, a herd of elephants burst from the forest and they proceeded to charge toward the funeral. The villagers all fled, but they had to leave Mermu's body behind. One of the elephants proceeded to knock the body out of the casket and toss it into the air. Meanwhile, some of the elephants charged toward the dead woman's home and destroyed it, while the rest of the herd damaged other homes. Just a terrible coincidence, or did one of those elephants remember something about the unfortunate Miss Mermu? An animal also spelled the end for this next man, but not a living one. Number 21. Dinosaurs are definitely the most famous animals none of us have ever seen. People love them, and they play starring roles in movies, and in theme parks, and even in public art, like in Spain, where Barcelona plays host to a huge papier-mâché sculpture of a stegosaurus. People come regularly to the site to admire the dino and take pictures, at least until a man and his son noticed something was off about the statue one day. There was something inside of it, and what the police discovered was shocking. It was a body inside of the dinosaur's leg. How did the unfortunate man get there? Well, he certainly wasn't eaten by it. Stegosaurus are herbivores, and they're extinct. But they found a clue buried even deeper within the sculpture. It was the man's cell phone. Police believe he accidentally dropped his phone while trying to get a picture of the dinosaur and entered the statue head first and then fell. Unable to get any traction and climb out, he was trapped and is believed to have died soon after, before being undetected inside the structure for several days. For this lawman, the long arm of the law was no match for a bird. Number 20. It was 2020 in the Philippines, and Lieutenant Christian Bulock was on patrol. There had been reports of illegal cockfighting rings in the area. Not only was this animal cruelty, this was during the COVID-19 pandemic, when gathering to watch chickens kill each other was strictly prohibited. Bulock led his men to the site of the fight, breached the door, and found several men and chickens armed with gaffs, or sharp blades on their legs that the chickens use for fighting. Undeterred, he quickly grabbed one of the chickens, only to fall victim to the bird's deadly weapon. The gaff sliced into his femoral artery and he began bleeding profusely. While his men tried their best to stem the bleeding, he was dead on arrival at the nearby hospital. In the end, the other officer shut down the fighting ring, arrested 3 people, and confiscated their money. It was a victory for the fight against spreading the plague and animal cruelty, although it came at a high price. One that could have been avoided if Officer Bulock wasn't so determined to round up all the chickens. After all, they're not the ones being arrested. This next mother probably should have checked where she was sticking her head. Number 19. Raising kids is tough. When you have a baby or a toddler, countless things can go wrong at any moment, including some you probably don't think are possible. That was the case for Belarus mom Yulia Sharko, who was celebrating her 21st birthday. She had just driven home and needed to get her 2-year-old daughter settled. She wanted to speed the process up, so rather than open the car door, she attempted to lift the little girl through the window, which was only half open. She just needed to reach in and get the little one out of her car seat, and that was when the girl accidentally hit the window button. Sharko's car had automatic windows, and there wasn't all that much room between the window and the roof when she stuck her head in. The window quickly rose, trapping the young mother's neck between the window and the frame, cutting off airflow to her brain. Her husband eventually found her, but by then she was unconscious and had suffered critical brain injuries. She never regained consciousness and died 8 days later in the hospital. If you think a kid can't reach something, they probably can. For this next guy, the sky was the limit, literally. Number 18. Julian Knott was the first name in ballooning. The British daredevil loved taking to the sky in hot air balloons and even developed balloons for space agencies to explore far-flung destinations like the moon of Titan. He was known for his record-setting achievements like crossing the Sahara in 1972 and the Alps only a year later. By his 70s, he had a whopping 96 British and 79 world ballooning records, and he wasn't done yet. In 2019, he was piloting an experimental pressurized high-altitude balloon in California. It was one of his most dangerous missions yet, but it wasn't the flight that got him. He landed the flight successfully, his gondola coming to a rest near a hill. But before he could even unbuckle his harness, disaster struck. The gondola suddenly transformed into an unstoppable sled, rocketing down the rocky slope. What followed was a tragic crash landing. The elderly balloonist at 75 years old didn't stand a chance. But the many guests at his funeral, in between talking up his history-making accomplishments, no doubt noted the irony that in the end it was the ground that got him, not the sky. Knott chased death his whole life, but this man just wanted to relax. Number 17. It was one of the strangest mysteries to ever shake up the quiet Scottish Highlands town of Invergarry. A bizarre death, a grand old-fashioned hotel, and a murder weapon no one saw coming. At the luxurious Glengarry Castle Hotel, American tourist Patrick McGuire was found dead, his body wedged tightly between a massive metal bench and the wall, causing him to asphyxiate. Who could have done this, and why would they choose to use a bench as a murder weapon? Well, it turns out the culprit was gravity. The unfortunate Mr. McGuire headed outside to take photos and have a cigarette break, and he never came back. An investigation showed that the ground under the bench was unstable, and the man sitting down caused it to tip over, resulting in a head injury and leaving him unable to struggle free before his oxygen was cut off. The hotel had previously been warned that the cast iron benches posed a safety risk, but they didn't remove them, resulting in a hefty fine to the hotel once the investigation was concluded. The culprit in this next mystery? Too much of a good thing. Number 16. When a 54-year-old construction worker passed away due to a heart ailment in 2019, it didn't look like a particularly suspicious death, but after the autopsy, his blood work showed something bizarre: an incredibly high level of glyceric acid. Not only is that a mouthful, but the chemical can lower potassium in the blood and reduce the level of electrolytes, which can alter the heart rhythm and make a cardiac event much more likely. The prime suspect was America's most hated candy. Black licorice is definitely the least favorite girl at the Halloween candy dance, but it's not just decisive, it has a high level of this acid, and the man had a licorice addiction. In fact, he had recently switched from red Twizzlers to traditional black licorice, which wouldn't be a problem if the man wasn't eating 2 bags of licorice a day for 3 weeks. This was a wildly atypical amount, and he became one of the only people ever to die of too much candy. Maybe Mom had a point. This next man lived the dream, well, for a very short time. Number 15. Richard Russell was a 28-year-old worker at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, serving as a ground service agent. Depressed and not feeling like his life was going anywhere, Russell apparently admired the high-flying pilots who came in and out of the airport every day. He dreamed of being just like them, and one day in 2018 he decided to make it a reality. He snuck into the cockpit of an Alaskan Airlines branded Horizon Air Bombardier, and he took it to the skies. He was finally living the dream. There was just one problem. Richard Russell had never flown a plane before. Jets were scrambled to take down the plane in what was originally assumed to be a hijacking, but after making contact with Russell, it became clear he didn't want to hurt anyone. He soared over Seattle, skimming past Mount Rainier and the Olympic Mountains, marveling at the view that most only dream of. Over the radio, he chatted casually, bringing up an orca that had recently made headlines, as if he were on a joyride rather than a stolen flight. Then, in an audacious move, he proceeded to do a barrel roll in the air before crashing his plane on a lightly populated island. He was the only person killed. It was a bizarre series of events and as much of a failure on the part of airport security as the unhinged pilot himself. This was probably the most unusual case of death by dessert anyone had ever seen. Number 14. Because ice cream wasn't exciting enough anymore, one of the hottest desserts of the early 2000s was Dippin' Dots. These tiny balls of ice cream were made with dry ice. They provided a unique sensation in the mouth and some powerfully concentrated flavors, but someone had to keep the machines running. In Seattle, one man took on the job, maintaining several at once, hauling them from place to place. It was routine work, until the day his wife borrowed the truck to drive the man's elderly mother home. The only problem was, maybe the maintenance wasn't up to scratch. The truck was packed with dry ice that was used to chill the ice cream, and it was leaking, with the vapors being packed with carbon dioxide. The car was flooded with a non-breathable gas, and it was later found at the side of the road with the 2 women unconscious. 77-year-old Hildegard Whiting was declared dead at the scene, and her daughter-in-law was taken to the hospital in critical condition. And all across the country, people reading the news went, maybe I'll stick with Rocky Road. This next man was tempting fate, but fate got him in a completely different way. Number 13. Hither Korkmaz wasn't a man who scared easily. He was one of few people willing to testify against Dutch criminal mastermind Willem Holleder, and he was seen as a key to bringing down the entire organization. Now, this could normally get someone fitted for cement shoes, or cement clogs in this case, but Korkmaz was undeterred. He was out and about going fishing when his fishing line hooked into an electric pole instead of a fat bass, and it pierced the protective coating, sending an electric surge through the line and fatally shocking Korkmaz. The man was killed instantly, dealing a blow to the trial. Holleder issued a statement regretting the man's death and no doubt denying any involvement. This next man proved it doesn't take a lot to lose it all. Number 12. Let's head down to Brazil, where Hildo Mustache Santos was the kind of guy who knew how to have a good time. He'd been drinking heavily one night, but fortunately he didn't drive under the influence. Instead, he staggered back to the gas station where he worked as a cashier, and he came up with a bizarre idea to create a miniature ocean in the store. Hildo was a well-liked, eccentric man, and he no doubt thought that this would be a fun way to liven up the store for the customers the next day. Hey, it made sense when he was drunk. Unfortunately, it didn't get too far before things went haywire. When people came into the store the next day, they found Santos on the floor with his head inside a gallon of water. It took a while for the police to figure out exactly what went wrong, but the theory is that while he was assembling the pool filled with water, he simply slumped over. He fell face first into the water and he was too drunk to get himself out. And so Mr. Santos became the one and only visitor to Playa del gas station. And sadly, he didn't get to bring any new guests to his institution unless you count the police and the medical examiners. In terms of unusual ways to drown, though, this woman might just take the cake. Number 11. Elizabeth Isherwood was a hard-working woman who worked as a care worker, and she was no doubt looking forward to a vacation. She rented a villa in Western Wales and then disappeared under mysterious circumstances. When the resort investigated, they ultimately cracked open a large cupboard, and they found Mrs. Isherwood inside completely naked. And even more bizarrely, the cupboard was filled with water. It looked like a case of foul play, but how would a murder like this even happen? Well, it turns out the truth is stranger than fiction. The unfortunate Miss Isherwood's death was a complete accident. It's believed that she had finished a shower, walked back into her room in the dark, and accidentally stepped into the airing cupboard. The door slammed shut and locked behind her. When she tried to claw her way out the back, she accidentally damaged a water pipe and caused water to flood the cupboard, soaking her and leading to her death from hypothermia. Was the villa a safety hazard? We're betting no one thought of an escape hatch in a cupboard. This next death went viral, and not just because its victim was a celebrity. Number 10. Rebecca Berger was rising fast, and the 33-year-old French fitness blogger had over 154,000 followers on Instagram in 2017. She was known for her recipes, her health advice, and her colorful personality. But that same year, she died under mysterious circumstances, at least at first. It turned out that the culprit was a common household appliance, one that had seriously injured people before: a whipped cream dispenser. These harmless-looking devices use gas capsules to siphon the cream. However, if there's too much pressure, the cap can explode, and it can become a powerful projectile. In the past, they've broken ribs and noses, causing hospital visits, but this time the cap was aimed directly for Rebecca Berger's chest, causing a massive heart attack. To which the company responded with, "Well, yeah, we know our whipped cream dispensers could hurt someone, but kill them?" They say when you seek revenge, dig 2 graves. Literally in this case. Number 9. At the Luzerne County Correctional Facility in Pennsylvania, rookie corrections officer Christopher Moles was a well-regarded man, and inmate Timothy D. Gilliam was not. He was known as a troublemaker around the prison, and one day in 2016 he and Moles exchanged words by the 5th-floor elevator. Gilliam proceeded to attack Moles, tackling the guard into the elevator door, and that's when things went very wrong. The elevator door, meant to hold steady, suddenly gave way. In an instant, Moles and Gilliam were left dangling over the gaping elevator shaft. Nothing but a sheer drop beneath them. A fellow guard fought desperately to pull them to safety, but it was too late. Both men plunged to the abyss. Moles was mourned as a hero who died in the line of duty, and Gilliam as someone who decided to pick a fight over a 50-foot drop. Fishing is a dangerous activity, but some catches are riskier than others. Number 8. Anyone who loves the sea knows that some of its creatures can be hazardous. After all, a stingray took out the beloved wildlife expert Steve Irwin. But that didn't stop Hawaii man Randy Lanes, who spotted a massive swordfish off the Big Island. He fired a spear at the massive sharp-billed fish, which fought back. Never a man to back down, Lanes jumped off the boat to wrangle it. The swordfish proceeded to stab Lanes in the chest, causing a fatal wound. Authorities mourned the beloved fishing boat captain, but warned that this was fairly predictable. After all, the pointy end of the swordfish is sharp enough that it sometimes even pierces fishing canoes. And not even the most powerful people in the world are safe, if people around them aren't careful. Number 7. Christopher de Margerie was a powerful French businessman, the chairman and the CEO of oil company Total SA. His desire to expand the company's holdings brought him to Moscow, where he hoped to cut a deal with the country's most powerful oligarchs and get the approval of its political power brokers. It seemed to be a successful meeting with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev when he and several crew members boarded a small plane. But that plane would not get home. It wouldn't even leave the ground. As they were taking off, a snowplow broke through the protected area and slammed directly into the plane, causing a crash and killing everyone on board. French authorities opened their own investigation into the mysterious death, but most people believed the snowplow driver was simply drunk or driving irresponsibly. Still, in Russia, no one knows for sure. The country has a long history of people who aroused the ire of the government dying under mysterious circumstances. This next case showed that playground antics can go too far. Number 6. Most people have either gotten a wedgie or given one, or at least watched it on TV. The classic bullying technique sounds funny. It involves pulling the underwear so far up your back that it leaves it wedged up there. And of course, once you leave school, it's no longer a prank, it's called assault. And one man learned that the hard way. Bradley Davis found himself in a heated argument with his stepfather, Denver Lee St. Clair. After St. Clair made a comment about Davis's mother, furious, Davis decided to retaliate in the most bizarre way imaginable. He grabbed the older man's waistband and yanked hard, pulling his underwear up over his head in what can only be described as an atomic wedgie gone horribly wrong. It's the kind of move you would expect to see in a cartoon, but in reality it turned deadly. The force of the wedgie left ligature marks on Denver Lee St. Clair's neck along with blunt force trauma. Worse yet, it caused asphyxiation, leading to his death. Now that's certainly a costly price to pay for talking ill about someone's mom, and the authorities agreed. Davis was arrested, convicted of manslaughter, and sentenced to 30 years behind bars. Yet another reason not to do everything you see on TV. Safety first. But this woman took it way too far. Number 5. When pandemics hit, most people take extreme measures, even more than hoarding toilet paper. In Taiwan in 2004, the pandemic of the moment was SARS, a deadly respiratory virus. While most people were wearing masks and avoiding large groups, one woman had a different idea, soaking herself in a bath of ethanol for 12 hours. There was no evidence that bathing in this alcohol could deter disease, but she didn't die of SARS, that's for sure. The alcohol soaked through her skin, causing a fatal level of intoxication, and she was found dead in the bathtub the next day. But at least she was spared the world's worst hangover. From here on out, it's all about the animals. Number 4. Swans are known for being one of the most aggressive birds out there, targeting humans who encroach on their territory. Which made it all the odder that a man named Anthony Hensley worked for a company that used swans and dogs to chase geese away from local properties. One day he was kayaking in a pond near Chicago wrangling up the swans when one of them became enraged and swam at him. It quickly attacked the hapless man, knocking him out of his kayak and leaving him struggling in the water. And that is where things get weird. For one thing, Hensley didn't seem to be able to swim well, and he wasn't wearing a life vest, an odd choice for a man who worked with water-based birds for a living. And what's more, the swan seemed to have a grudge against him because it kept coming back to attack him again and again, even as he was struggling in the water. Hensley became exhausted and was unable to stay afloat any longer. By the time rescuers reached him, it was too late. They pulled him from the water, but despite their best efforts, he was pronounced dead at the hospital. But even the smallest animals can claim lives under the right circumstances. Number 3. Captain Dan Salas wasn't just a deckhand. He was the star of the show. For years, the 54-year-old veteran fisherman entertained school children aboard a charter boat, turning routine cruises into unforgettable adventures. He was known for his wild antics, his larger-than-life personality, and his willingness to push the limits for a laugh. And on one fateful day in 2009, he took things a step further. He took a small bait fish and he popped it into his mouth, swallowing it whole. There was just one problem. It lodged in his throat and he was unable to dislodge it, leaving him struggling for breath in front of dozens of horrified children. He soon passed out and died, providing a valuable and horrifying lesson to all those kids on his boat. But no animal where it shouldn't be caused more damage than this one. Number 2. The year was 2010, and a mid-sized plane carrying 21 people was finishing its flight across the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Suddenly, it lost altitude and crashed to the ground, hitting a house about a half-mile away from the runway that it was aiming for. 19 of the 21 people on board were killed on the spot, while one of the survivors died at the hospital. There was only one person around to tell the story of what happened on the plane, and what they revealed turned this into one of the most bizarre plane crash stories in history. While initial investigations looked into the possibility of fuel exhaustion, it was determined that the plane had plenty left in the tank. The survivor later reported that one of the passengers had brought a duffel bag on board, and that contained a live crocodile. The reptile escaped during the flight, causing a panic, and sent all the passengers running toward the cockpit. This caused the weight in the plane to shift dramatically, altering its trajectory and sending it plummeting to the ground. Oh, and there was one more survivor. The crocodile reportedly crawled from the wreckage and disappeared into the wild. But in terms of shocking deaths caused by animals, nothing can top this one. Number 1. The year was 1988 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Kachi the poodle was about to meet a tragic end. The little dog was playing on the balcony of its home when it suddenly fell from the railing, plunging 13 floors to its death. But Kachi wasn't the only victim. It happened to land directly on the head of 75-year-old Marta Espina, who was walking along the street and was fatally hit by the fast-falling fuzzball. But the carnage caused by the pooch was just the beginning. As Edith Sola was attracted by the crowd rushing over to see the carnage, she was hit by a bus and killed. The carnage caused an older man to be overcome with stress, and he immediately had a fatal heart attack. And that probably makes Kachi the poodle with the highest kill count in the history of humanity. Some of these deaths are so absurd, they are hard to believe, but which one blew your mind the most? Or do you know of an even dumber way someone met their end? Tell us in the comments. Want to know more about some unusual deaths from the happiest place on earth? Check out Most Horrific Deaths at Disneyland or watch this video instead.